Hello, my friend. In my last video, we spoke about business process mapping and all the ways that can provide value for our business, even if we are solopreneurs or working as part of a small team. During that video, I mentioned the term standard operating procedures, also known as SOPs. Now, these can often be confused with business processes and business process mapping. So in today's video, I thought we could break down what a standard operating procedure is, how they compare to business processes and business process maps, and how we can go about creating these SOPs without it consuming too much time or energy. SOPs versus processes versus process maps. These are all terms used to describe how things get done in our business. And we can think of these as answering 5 key questions every time we need to execute a repeatable task. Why does this matter? What needs to happen? When does this need to happen? Who is responsible for this? And how do we make it happen? Let's start with business process. So this refers to a full workflow from start to finish. For example, our sales process looks at all the steps between a new lead inquiry all the way through to deal completion. We can write this process out, and there definitely is some value to that. But when there are different variables, such as different decisions impacting the next step or outcome, then it could be a lot easier to visualize this on the page. Our minds are able to process that quicker, and at a glance we're able to see exactly what happens next. And that's where our business process map comes in. It's where we take that written process and we display it in visual form using different shapes that make it a lot easier to understand at a glance and follow through on what happens next. So this is a process map. If you want to learn more about that, I'll include a link to that video where we explore creating that in detail in the description below. For now, let's come back to those 5 questions that we mentioned and look at what our business process map answers. Why? So we know by the title there is a clear purpose and reason for this process map. It's designed to help us accomplish something, such as manage our leads and hopefully close them. What? It outlines exactly what steps need to happen, what decisions need to be made, and it also looks at when they need to happen as well. We can see the clear dependencies as we follow through on the map. Depending on how you created your process map, you may or may not have accounted for who is responsible for each step and decision. So our process map answers a lot of these questions, but what it's not great at answering is how. And that is where our standard operating procedures come in. Standard operating procedures are a set of instructions that show you how to complete one specific task within your business process map. If we look at my sales process map here, I might have a standard operating procedure or SOP for completing a sales call. I might have another one for creating a proposal. So when I reach that proposal stage on my map, I'm not having to start from scratch, blank page, try to figure out what exactly do I include in this proposal. I know exactly how to execute this task because I have a set of instructions, and maybe I even have templates to make this easier. Now, to show you what this looks like and how to put one together, I think it's always helpful to share an example. So I'd like to invite you into my Notion account now, and we'll take a look at my SOP for how to create a client proposal. Before I get into this, you do not have to use Notion. You can use whatever tool you are already using, whether it is Google Docs, Asana, ClickUp. In my last video, I mentioned a tool called puzzle.app, and that is dedicated to documenting your operations. What's nice about that is that you have the business process map, and then you can click into the step and you can add your SOP and your instructions directly in there. Not sponsored, just think it's a cool tool worth mentioning, especially if you're a team. But I use Notion. So let's take a look at that. So starting with the title, I always start with how to. So how to do something, it's an instruction. We then have a quick overview, basically says what this SOP is and why it matters. We then have a relation property. This links through to my workflows database. So it tells me which workflow or process this is a part of. And as we can see, it's part of the sales process. I then have the steps. So what step in the process it is. And this helps me sort the SOPs as part of a process in order. I link to the tools that I'm using for this. Execution type. Now that we are getting more involved in automation and AI, I think it's always helpful to distinguish if this is manual, human only, if it's completely automated, or if it's a hybrid task. For me, this is a hybrid. Responsible, you'll notice here that it's not an individual, it's a role. This is optional, but the reason I prefer roles over individuals is that if the individual in that role changes, you don't want to have to go through all of your SOPs and update them to the new person responsible for them. If you set this up as a role, then whoever is in the role is responsible. And the way that you do that in Notion is just to come into your settings on your sidebar, go to members, go to groups, and then create a group. And then once you've created the group, you can add members in here and you can click in. And if we go to members, you can remove members and add members as needed. So this is really for maintenance and making sure it is accurate. We then have AI skill. Now this is not necessary, but if you are using AI a lot and you're building out a skills database, I link the skill here. And then status. So the current status of this SOP, so we can make sure that it is accurate and up to date and we don't have team members executing tasks the wrong way because they're following false instructions. And now we scroll down to the page and this is where we add the how. And we start off with our trigger. So what initiates this? What starts this task off? In my case, it is on successful completion of a sales call when a verbal agreement has taken place. Then we have our prerequisites. This is sometimes referred to as inputs. Essentially the same thing, everything we need in place in order to execute this task. So if we were baking a cake, think of this as our raw ingredients. If we were missing an ingredient, we might not be able to execute the task. So this is what we need to have in place. In my case, it is the lead has to be a good fit, qualified, the sales call is completed, I have recorded the meeting notes in Fathom, that's a note taker I use, and I've got a verbal agreement on the call. So I think of the proposal contract stage as wrapping up the sale. I try to get the sale closed on the call. And then we get to our written instructions. And this is an ordered checklist of every action we need to take in order to execute this task. You'll notice there are a lot of verbs here. You'll also see that I've provided relevant context when needed. So when I say open our proposals database, I've linked to the proposals database. When I say log into Fathom and copy the sales script, I've linked to the tool in my tools database where I have the login information for that. Scrolling down, I say open the proposal page and prompt our personal agent, and I link to the instructions for the personal agent. I include the prompt in here. I also have some visual aids in here. So any area where I think it might be confusing or unclear, I've added a visual aid in here to support that. Underneath my written instructions, I then have the definition of done. So we don't want there to be any confusion around, okay, when do I know this is complete? We want to make it really clear. You can even take this a step further and turn these into checkboxes or bullet point lists. And then I have a troubleshooting section, which is optional, but I think it can be really helpful just to ensure clarity and avoid any bottlenecks if an issue arises. So every time there's something that the person executing this task is uncertain of, or there's an issue that has arisen and we've already dealt with it previously, I add a question and an answer here. That way they can continue on their way and we don't have to stop each time this question comes up. And again, you would just write this out in whatever tool you are using. And a really good quality check to ensure you haven't bloated it with unnecessary information, but also you provided all the information needed, is to look at it through the lens of, if I handed this to a stranger today without them knowing anything about my business, would they be able to execute this task for me? And depending on the answer there, you may want to make some adjustments. Now, one thing I haven't done for this SOP yet is record a video walkthrough. If you can record a video walkthrough, it's going to make this even better and easier to follow, especially if it's a technical walkthrough of any kind. You can use a tool like Loom, or I use Descript right now, any tool that's going to allow you to record and embed the video wherever you're storing your SOPs. In Notion, it would be a case of adding a video block. So we just do our / search for video, and then we could either upload or link our video in there. I'm going to delete that for now. I'm also going to change my status to active. A couple extra tips to make this even easier. If you are someone who prefers to talk rather than type, you can use a voice dictation tool such as Whisperflow. There are a lot out there. Fellow ops friend Tony Shan recommended Whisperflow to me earlier this year and I fell in love with it. If someone recommends a tool to me and it works, I'm not searching elsewhere. That will do it for me. I'm not going to get caught up in shiny object syndrome. What I really like about this is I can just hit the keyboard shortcut, speak the steps out loud, add the prerequisites, all that good stuff, my definition of done, even my troubleshooting Q&A. It's going to clean up any little errors or ums and mistakes that I make, and then it's going to add that content to the page just like that. And if I want to clean up the format, I can always ask my personal agent in Notion to do that for me. Another tip, the person who is responsible for this task should be the one to write out the SOP. They understand exactly what it takes to execute the task. They know what tools are required. They also know any common issues or snags. They can fill out that troubleshooting section with ease. They should also be responsible for maintaining it as things change moving forward. And I do recommend that you review your SOPs frequently based on how often you execute them. If you want a general guideline, I use every 90 days just to check. I usually do it at my quarterly review and planning session. I'll go through and just make sure they're all up to date. But we also want to get into the habit of updating it as we go. So if the person doing the task is the one documenting it, anytime there is a change in how we do things, we just want to hop in there and update it. I hope this has provided you some value and clarity on the difference between business processes and SOPs and shown you exactly how you can create both. They do work alongside each other. If there's one idea that I would encourage all of us to take away from this, it's that documenting our repetitive work is a freedom unlock. If you work for yourself, it shows you exactly where to automate or improve a step. It also gives you the option of delegating if you choose to in the future. If you're part of a team, it's going to make onboarding a whole lot easier and that first task delegation a lot less daunting, not only as the owner or the manager, but also as the new employee. I'd also add that this is building our intellectual property. And that feels more important than ever, especially if you are a knowledge worker. We talk about documenting being really valuable as part of an exit strategy. If we ever wanted to sell our business, it would provide value. But the way we think about things, the way we do things, and our methodology around that, it's uniquely ours. It does provide value to our business. It is often our differentiator. This was always valuable, but I think this time that we're living in, it's becoming even more valuable. And as you saw, it doesn't have to be some 30-page handbook that no one opens. It just needs to be practical and help us to work efficiently. If this was helpful, I would super appreciate if you left a comment, share your thoughts, your questions, any requests for my next video. When you interact with me in the comment section, that is my absolute favorite part of not only doing YouTube, but just my job in general. So I hope that I can meet you there. And if you think think I've earned a like or a subscribe, I would be very grateful for that too. It supports this channel and it allows me to keep creating these videos and sharing my knowledge. I hope we speak soon. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day wherever you are in the world.